What's up, Ego Hackers? Welcome to the C.S. Joseph Podcast Premium Edition. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph, blah, blah, blah. And this is Season 12, Part 2, Episode 11. How to cultivate social skills as an INTJ. I would not be surprised if all the INTJs of the world decided to beeline, or A-line, because it might be faster, directly to this particular lecture. The reason INTJs even get into Jungian analytical psychology, especially the women, because it's like chick crack to the women, it's because they really have a hard time navigating social norms, social etiquette, and end up creating a lot of problems for themselves and other people, a lot of negative consequences, because they're like walking social faux pas themselves, and they consistently do that. It's so funny because the unconscious focused versions of INTJs want so desperately to be popular, and their extroverted feeling trickster consistently creates a social environment for them where they are hardly ever popular at all. But INTJs, all about triple pragmatism, all about their independence. No one's more willing to break the rules than they are. They don't need justification for it. It's just more like, oh, I want to do this thing. This rule is getting in the way. I'm going to sidestep this rule. I'm going to break the rule. I'm going to go over the rule. I'm going to go under the rule. I'm going to go around the rule. Or I'll make up new rules. Or I'll lie about the rules. But whatever I can do to get what I want, I'm going to do. And this has been like a consistent thing amongst INTJs. I mean, I have an INTJ. And, well, guess what? It's basically how he behaves all the time. Because he wants what he wants. And he gets so upset when he doesn't get what he wants. He'll start thrashing or throwing a tantrum or whatever and get all upset. And then it's time for a timeout when he starts acting like that. If there's one thing INTJs hate, it's incarceration, that's for sure. They don't like them some timeouts, that's for sure. They don't like their personal freedom being taken away, yet oftentimes it's INTJs out there who make use of their personal freedoms, oftentimes to the detriment of other people, and they're not even aware. They're not even aware of that. Because remember, folks, a person's social skills, their social failings, literally are derived from their trickster and their demon function. You know, and from the trickster perspective, it's when the INTJ is starting to put their own values above everybody else's values and their own value systems above others, to the point where they'll use their extroverted feeling God function in such a way. They'll use their extroverted feeling God function in such a way where if other people are not accepting of their views, they won't have anything to do with those people, basically. And that's in general how INTJs act, especially the immature ones. The real mature ones are the ones that will disagree with you to your face, but still stick around. Still actually want to be there. Still actually want to be your friend or your family, even though they don't even agree with anything that you're saying. One of the reasons for that is because they oftentimes get curious. Curiosity, I've noticed for INTJs, oftentimes is the fuel for them actually developing their social skills. But curiosity is really, really important. Oftentimes, you know, let's say like some INTJs are like, no, fuck you, I'm going to door slam you because you don't have matching values with me. Their extroverted feeling trickster gets in the way, and then they door slam an individual. The more mature INTJs are like, okay, yeah, you might disagree with me, and I'm curious as to why, so they'll stick around just to observe you, to see if your value system actually has more value than theirs. And it really comes down to figuring out how you think and how you came to your conclusion, basically. And at that point, they may actually end up growing over time. And that's how they start to develop social skills and actually adopt the social skills of other people in general. But social skills continues to be a problem for all the 16 types, especially INTJs due to their extroverted feeling trickster, just like similar to ISTJs. The thing is, ISTJs kind of get a pass because ISTJs are at least affiliative, whereas whereas INTJs are not. They're very pragmatic. They're the most pragmatic of the types, actually. And they're only really interested in being affiliative towards themselves, which is their ISFJ superego. But when it comes to everything else in their life, it's all about pragmatism, independent, I can do it myself. And they always try to prove that they can do it themselves. This is actually what makes it very difficult for INTJ women in Western society. And it can lead to like an insanely high amount of depression and a very insanely high amount of loneliness. Although oftentimes INTJs will claim, well, I don't really have that much problems with loneliness. It's not something that they would actually admit. But it is true. They really do struggle with it. This happens consistently, and proof of it is it comes out in their physical bodies. It's why the body keeps score is something that really resonates with INTJs, especially INTJ women, because they'll lose sleep over it. In fact, they won't sleep consistently. And do that, and that lack of sleep is literally, honestly, to loneliness, because the thing that actually helps them sleep is knowing that they have made someone else comfortable or someone else around them is able to relax, and then as a result, they can relax. But without that, they're often not really going to get some sleep. They have the worst sleeping patterns of all human beings on the planet. And they're entirely dependent on other people being relaxed around them in order for them to relax. Otherwise, they just become insanely overstimulated at all times. I know one such INTJ who has to wear ring plugs all the time just to prevent herself from being overstimulated from all the extra noise, protecting her SI demon oftentimes, because those distractions can actually harm her extroverted sensing feminine primary function, her performance. She doesn't want her performance to be harmed, so she wears those plugs just to be able to relax, which is good. It's really good for her to be able to do that. It's just that oftentimes socializing ends up, looking to INTJs, and having social skills. It's like, oh, this is just a really big chore. Why do I have to invest in this? But then they realize that they're not even going to be remotely successful in life until they actually do it. Always the INTJ who believes that they can do everything on their own, when the reality of the situation is that they can't. They really can't. They really can't. Something Mind Temple needs to learn is that they only have their power is derived from the people, not from themselves. Because people give them that power, right? Well, INTJs need to realize that skills are not something that they've developed on themselves. Skills are actually something that they have learned from others, because they learn through the mistakes of others and observing other people, and that's been consistent over and over and over. So please be aware of this phenomenon when it comes to INTJs. You can be very piratey when it comes to, take what you can and get nothing back when it comes to social situations. Again, placing their value system above everybody else. Or sometimes dealing with fits of jealousy, or even lust in some cases, but fits of jealousy when it comes to, their own personal performance and making sure that they're the top performer in the room, and then they'll sabotage other people's performance so that they're the one who outshines everybody else. They're very aware of who is shining who, and that also includes, and especially, INTJ women. But the problem is that the society continues to set up INTJ women for failure. This is why they really suck at having relationships with devoted men. It's very weird, and oftentimes INTJ women, instead of targeting the high-value men, they end up targeting the safe men as often as they can, because already dealing with their insecurity of extroverted sensing inferior, which if they're SDSF as an octagram, they're prioritizing their female stress relief side of their hypergamy as a result, because having to perform for others is extremely stressful. Extremely stressful. But some men make it really easy. Some men have a low bar for performance. Like, for example, SI child men. And oftentimes INTJ women choose those kinds of men over SI inferior men because it's just so much easier for them. It's just so much easier, and they're playing it safe, they're playing it easy, only for them to divorce those men later in their lives, because that's not something that they want as their hypergamy and cognitive focus adjusts itself. such that they're not able to get what they want from the relationship, and that's the worst part of it. So they oftentimes set up other people for failure because they themselves are afraid of failure. Another INTJ hang-up where they're just projecting themselves on everyone else. Another thing is like judging books by their cover. They can be insanely shallow, just like ESTJs can be insanely shallow. And that high level of shallowness is what oftentimes inhibits them from being able to connect with people. But it's funny because INTJs don't see the value in connecting with others because every one of them, men or women, imagine that they could do life by themselves. But the reality of the situation is that they can't. They absolutely can't. No human being can do it by themselves. It takes a long time, especially if they have FI child superiority complex, which is really something that's as a result. It's usually something that's as a result of their upbringing, their hyper-independence, their pragmatism. It's because like every INTJ out there has something to prove. But here's the question. Who are they trying to prove it to? Seriously, who are you trying to prove yourself to? Because in the action of you actually attempting to prove yourself, you're not actually proving yourself to anyone. You're actually making the situation far worse for yourself as a result. So why would you do it? Seriously, why would you do it? So it ends up causing a lot of problems over time. They lose out on opportunities. They lose out on business opportunities. They lose out on educational opportunities. They lose out on opportunities for achievement. The women lose out on opportunities for men because they're just so scared and very anxious, and they're so afraid. Like for example, here's a really good example for INTJ women. Almost every INTJ woman I've ever met, when I ask them the question, do you want to be a mother someday? They almost always say no, or almost say not sure. Because it has nothing to do with the man, it has everything to do with the fact that they just automatically believe that they're terrible mothers, automatically. Because they look at themselves and it's like, oh, do I have like training here? Do I have experience with this? Have I been around other people who are really good mothers, etc.? And usually that answer is no. So they just assume that they're not good at it. You know, like, how do you think they're doing socially if a woman is having that perspective? It's like she's setting herself up for failure herself when it comes to the sexual marketplace and basically pre-choosing to make herself a victim of hookup culture where she's just used up. And then that FI child superiority complex, which draws its self-worth from her sense of accomplishment, from her sense of achievement, how much money she makes, how many businesses she owns, all these different things, like whether or not she's similar to Paris Hilton, who is an INTJ woman, although Paris Hilton basically had everything handed to her and had a really nice starting point for herself as an INTJ who's just a finisher. But really, literally, that's the thing. That's the thing. INTJs, men or women, the number one reason why they have poor social skills, obviously functionally, it's extroverted feeling trickster and also introverted sensing demon. Sure it is. But it's in setting themselves up for failure. They never actually trust themselves with success. They never actually trust themselves with success. So they actually, because you think about it, they're projecting their paranoia, oftentimes onto others, right? Like, I can't really date an INTJ woman without her getting like super paranoid on me. It just comes with the territory. Every single INTJ woman that has ever shared my bed, it's always been that way every time. I have to go through this stupid paranoia check with them every time. But the way their paranoia is going is that they often project the paranoia onto themselves, okay? To the point where while they're so distrusting of other people, the reason why is because they are actually first distrusting of themselves, okay? This is why INTJs consistently are really bad at social skills, because they don't give themselves a chance. They don't give themselves a chance. And I'll be honest, like, I've dated SDUF INTJs, I've dated UDSF INTJs, and UDUF INTJs. Oddly enough, it's actually the INTJs that I've had the most success with are UDUF ones, actually, the UDUF ones. I've had more success with UDUF INTJ women than any of the others. And I have not had the opportunity. No, that's not true. I did date an SD SF INTJ woman on 2 different occasions, but those were extremely short-lived, very short-lived situations. And it just kind of got old, and it just how socially inept they are, because they're so mistrusting of themselves. Because here's another thing, going to SI Demon, INTJs have this problem where they don't learn from their own failure. So they're doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over. And we'll talk about how they get out of this. But, from an extroverted feelings trickster side, it's like, yeah, I'm projecting my values and I have the superiority complex. And it's usually just to hide their ego from pain of the fact that they know that they're either performing poorly or whatever. And then also they're paranoid and projecting their paranoia, and they're being paranoid of themselves because they don't trust their own abilities. They don't trust their own capabilities to get something done. But the reason why is because they don't see failure as a teacher. INTJs, because of their vainglory, deadly sin, they are consistently chasing success. Chasing other successful people. But they don't have any time looking at the people around them who've actually failed. And it's so funny because INTJs need to learn that they have to become students of failure. Students of their own failure and students of the failure of others. But they oftentimes are not. They oftentimes won't, because they believe that just by paying attention to success, because they have such a small attention span with their introverted sensing demon, that if they pay attention to success, they too will become successful. This is actually 100% false. 100% false. And because these people do this all the time, they never actually learn from failure. They never do, especially their own failure, which is the most important thing, how they themselves fail. They actually end up, because they could see into what other people are doing and see into other people's failures better than they could see into their own failures, they overvalue the failures of others in the process. But do they even track those failures? Do they have the skill to track their own failure? Oh my God, God forbid they do that. God forbid. God forbid that they sit down there with their extroverted sensing inferior and remind themselves over and over and over of how much they have failed in the past. God forbid. What's really interesting about that? The SDSF INTJ woman who is in my life consistently, and I know her husband, he's a great man, very good at ESFJ, she's got a natural pair, good on her, but she is constantly tracking her own failure on a regular basis, constantly, and everyone else's. She's got this notebook where she tracks failure, and that's mostly what she does. And it starts off as just a written codex of, okay, these are the reasons why I don't like these people. But really, I've had the honor of her letting go of her paranoid for just a few minutes and letting me actually review her notebook. And I got to read the contents of that notebook. And it's all of her stored up judgments of every single person in her life, every single person that she observes. She has a page for each person, and she has these little dossiers. And it starts off as intention, her intention is reasons why I don't like people, reasons to avoid people, reasons to, but reality is she's tracking all of their failure. She's tracking everyone else's failure. Wait a minute. What is she doing? She's using extroverted thinking parent. The one thing an INTJ needs to learn how to master in order to have social skills. Because INTJs spend so much time paying attention to the wrong thing, using their vainglory, deadly sin, to paying attention to successful people. The problem is that the definition of success is so subjective because each individual person has their own definition of what success is to them. I mean, we are a solipsistic race, basically. We're very solipsistic, very self-serving, very self-aware individuals, people. We're very internalized as a race. We're very invested in our own personal survival. But the problem is that they pay so much attention to success, they don't understand the value of failure. I actually had an SDUF INTJ man in my face 2 weeks ago. He got in my face and he's like, Chase, what the hell is your problem? I'm like, what are you talking about, bro? And he's like, why the fuck should I listen to you about relationship advice? You have had three failed marriages in your time. You've had 3 failed marriages. You keep having relationship failure after relationship failure after relationship failure over and over and over. Why should I or anyone else pay attention to you? What makes you so credible? And I'm like, And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Are you sure this is the pot calling the kettle black here? Because this is a man who has children. Like, he's got like 3 children at least with with different mothers, and as much as I have children with different mothers, I'm just like, well, wait a minute, what are your own failures? But then when I talk to him over time, I realize that he considers his relationships more successful than mine. I mean, that's okay. I mean, but that also could be FI child superiority complex. It is possible. But this is a man I have great respect for, insanely great respect. He's one of the few people in my life who actually gives me really good quality feedback. And I love him. I love him for it. I love his feedback. But he asked me the question, what the hell, why should I care about your perspective on intersexual dynamics, gender dynamics, or relationships, because you have had so many failed relationships, especially failed relationships with my own personality type. Okay, there's FI child talking, right? And I'm like, yeah, you're making a good point. Except, here's the problem. You're unconscious focused, which means you're outwardly vainglorious, which means you're overly invested in paying attention to everyone else's success, basically. And in doing so, what you're doing is setting yourself up for failure, because each individual person has their own definition for what success is supposed to look like, okay? And you're basically following everyone else's definition of what success looks like, instead of learning how to use your extroverted thinking parent to define what success means to you, okay? INTJs, in order for them to grow, in order for them to mature, in order for them to have the absolute best social skills, in order for them to actually have to offer something to other people, they need to develop the knowledge with extroverted thinking parent and the wisdom how to wield it with their introverted feeling child, okay, by tracking the failures of others and actually seeing that knowing other people's failures and even their own failures, which is even higher value, that's the highest value thing, is that from that perspective, they will actually naturally become more successful. Because an INTJ will not be able to develop their own definition of what success looks like for themselves until after they go out of their way to look at how everyone else has failed reaching success. And then what they do is work hard to avoid doing what other people have done. And then what success means to them will become that much more clear. But even beyond that, once they've developed the skill of being able to track everyone else's failures in their lives, then they should internalize that, learn how to internalize that with their introverted sensing demon, and being willing to look at themselves in the mirror and keep track of their own failures and remind themselves of areas that they have failed. Remind themselves of how they themselves have fallen short of their own standard. INTJs can be extremely alienating people. I was alienated by an SDUF INTJ man recently, actually. Even though I was telling the truth, he was telling how, I'm full of shit, But the thing is because his outward vainglory is so focused on success because he himself wants to be successful. But folks, if you think about it, that's a shortcut. It's a shortcut. If you're paying attention to only successful to only success, and you're not paying enough attention to other people's failure, or especially your own failure, it's because you are mentally trying to take a shortcut to success. You are making a TI critic assumption, okay, because of extroverted feeling trickster, because you assume that a successful person is what everyone else values is success, which is not true. Everyone else has their own definition of what success means to them, FE trickster, so you're not aware of what success actually means to other people. So something may look like success, and then you become invested in the flimsy thing that looks like success, because you're trying to shortcut your way to success. And you make the assumption that that's the success you want, even though it may not actually be success to begin with. So one of the most poignant questions an INTJ can actually ask another person is, hey, what does success mean to you? What does failure mean to you? And they should track that. They should keep track of that. They should put that in a notepad. That'd be amazing. Because if they live their life that way, all of a sudden they start to realize that there is no shortcut. This is what Buddhism teaches. There is no shortcut. And that itself is the path to modesty, right? Getting them closer to their subconscious focus. Because modesty is hyper-aware of their own failures. They're hyper-aware of the failures of others, but especially their own failures. Then, that makes the INTJ less judgmental. It makes the INTJ less shallow, right? And because of that, then people actually want to have relationships with them. People actually want to socialize with them. People will actually bring the INTJ opportunities that may actually lead to the INTJ's success. And that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what brings success. I mean, this is why Rollo Tomassi wrote The Rational Male, Volumes 1 through 5. He spent a lot of time studying everyone else's failures, men's failures with women. And then he noticed the praxeology behind red pill truths that he is presenting within his books. Now, his recommendations for solutions in terms of how he himself defines success, or what he himself believes that other men define as success when it comes to women, right, which is obviously a high body count. Having sex with as many women as possible, even though pumping and dumping women is morally wrong and shouldn't happen, and is not masculine. So Rollo Tomassi, a.k.a. George Miller, is himself too shallow, is himself providing this so-called shortcut that has no basis on what other men define as what means success to them. He's just making the assumption that all men, through their sexual strategy of polygyny, are defining success with as many notches on the bedpost as possible. And then claiming, at the same time, that because we live in an open, hypergamous society, that women deserve it, which is false. That is absolutely false. It doesn't help the problem. It actually makes it worse. A lot worse. A lot worse. Culture is not going to change. INTJs continue to make these mistakes over and over and over. Their TI critic makes assumptions about what other people value with their TI trickster. Their extrovert intuition nemesis is being paranoid of other people. Why? Because they haven't learned from their own failure of their SI demon. And they're projecting that paranoia and mistrust on other people because an INTJ oftentimes doesn't even know themselves. They're not willing to face the truth of themselves because their FI child is being delusional and they're walking around in a state of delusion on a regular basis. It's really frustrating and annoying. Really frustrating. And it's especially bad with the women. People are like, oh, Chase, you're always going on and on about INTJ women and how much they suck. I'm sorry to say this, folks, but they do. They do suck. They don't want to suck. They've been set up for failure. Honestly, INTJ women are often victims of this society and victims of themselves. And they lie to themselves because it's the only way that they can live with themselves. They have to have that introverted feeling child delusion. They have to reach for the shortcuts because guess what, folks? They don't know any different. And INTJs in general, regardless of gender, they don't know any different. They don't know just how socially inept they are. They have no clue. They're very socially inept. And it's because they're assuming what other people value all the time. They're projecting mistrust and distrust onto other people all the time because they don't know themselves enough to actually trust themselves. But they can never trust themselves unless they're willing to confront the fact that they're failures and that they fail on a regular basis. And because of that, it gets worse. It gets worse and worse over time. A lot worse. And it's sad. It's very sad to see. Folks, this is my golden pair. I love my golden pair. Every INTJ that is in my life, I love them. I care about them dearly. Even the ones that mistreat me, I love them. I need them in my life. I spent time with a sitting member on the Council for National Policy 2 weekends ago. An INTJ, his name is Sebastian Gorka, and I had the honor of smoking cigars with him on a Saturday. And he's SDUF. He's very vainglorious. And you could tell that he's chased other people's success his whole life. But in having a conversation with him, you could just tell that he's on the path to defining what success means to him. He's on the path of being able to see where his own failures have contributed to himself, and also negatively contributed to himself and negatively contributed to other people in his life. And he's changing. He's still growing. And he himself is improving. And it's really, really fascinating to see. Because when I first met him, I paid zero attention to him. I was too busy focusing on ego hacking love. I was there on my laptop in the cigar lounge, and then all of a sudden he just sits right next to me. Probably because I was the only person that wasn't worshiping at his feet, because every man in that location wanted to shake his hand, get photos with him, worship him, feed that vainglory, a deadly sin, etc. All those people doing the same thing that INTJs do naturally, wanting the kind of success that he has, and they're desperately hoping that the success that he has is rubbing off on them. The typical vainglory, deadly sin of the human race, right? And that's what he was doing. But you could actually tell that he was sick of it. He was actually sick of it. He just wanted to be a normie for once. He just wanted to sit there and just be like, I don't know anyone. Hopefully no one knows me. Hopefully I could just have a regular conversation with a regular person. That's how I treated him. Yeah, he's rich and famous, sure. But I didn't care. I didn't care about that at all. I want to know who he was as a person, regardless of whatever bullshit success, because it's such a subjective term that you're literally, INTJs are wasting their life on that. I mean, even my INTJ X, she's SDUF, still to this day is chasing success and has yet to learn from her failures. And it's so ridiculous because she's in her 40s now, and she has yet to look at herself in the mirror. She has yet to take stock or take inventory of her own failure. When an INTJ does that, do you think people want to be friends with them? Do you think people want to stick around for them? Do you think it cultivates loyalty in people? It absolutely doesn't. It does not cultivate loyalty at all. People won't stick around. They're flimsy. And INTJs hate that. But little do INTJs know that they themselves are the cause. Because they're intimidating. They're intimidating to literally everyone. Vainglorious INTJs, men or women, are intimidating to other people. To the point where people assume that they got it all together when they actually don't have it together. They have it together the least compared to everybody else. And then they continue to be set up by failure for other people. They continue to self-sabotage as a result. And they never actually get anywhere in their life. It's this huge catch-22. All because they're not paying attention to their introverted sensing demon. They are not categorizing or cataloging their own failure. Think about it. Would you really want to be friends with an INTJ who is not honest with themselves about how they failed in life? Or do you want to be a friend with an INTJ who is honest about themselves and the failure that they have in their life? Which one? I mean, it's pretty evident. It's pretty self-evident. It's pretty self-evident. Which INTJ has the social skill? Which INTJ is the one that you would want to be your friend? Or the one that you would want to be your spouse, right? God, I'm so glad I did not have sexual relations with him. Whew. So glad. Probably would have been blackmailed in that romance con if that happened. Let's be honest. So INTJs, the key to you having social skills, stop chasing success. Utilize your parent function, okay? Actually look at the data in front of you. Look at the data and keep track of other people's failures. Then, afterwards, compare your failure to their failure and realize where you are actually failing, where you are not measuring up to your own standard, not the standards of others. You have to define what success looks like for yourself. You think I was able to do that? Fuck no. She wasn't. She was chasing the Paris Hilton dream. She wanted to be rubbing elbows with people like Donald Trump. She even sent me doctored photos at certain times of her family that she claimed was her family. Then they're hanging out with Donald Trump or whatever to like prop herself up and make herself look good. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? What a waste. That's nothing to do with you. That's not you. And it just creates this huge bed of shallowness, a huge bed of shallowness, without even realizing it. And this is the problem, over and over and over. Because it's just like, guys, you don't need to be shallow. You don't need to be that person. You get to actually be who you are. I get that you have God function of extroverted feeling, and I know INTJs that you are very anxious, that you are not accepted. But there's people out there like me who accept you for who you are. There's people out there like me that want to get to know you, that want to be your friend, that want to make you my spouse, for example. It'd be great to have an INTJ woman as a spouse. It'd be really great. It'd be fantastic. I just can't do it because every INTJ I've ever met is still chasing that success. But then, like, I find an INTJ woman, like, for example, she's UDOF. One of two INTJ women in my life that I actually miss. One of two. My first love was a UDUF INTJ. And I know that I could have transformed her into UDSF. My thing is that I was so young and stupid in those days with my INTJ X that... So yeah, it ends up becoming a problem over and over and over them. Why would anyone want to have relationships or friendships with INTJs? Unless they are aware of their own failure and honest about their own failure. That's why I have an INTJ on my team. He is so honest, and I have watched him grow over time into a man who is very brutally honest with his feedback that he gives me. But he's also becoming even more honest with himself and more honest about giving himself that honest feedback and really taking time to take a good look at himself to the point where he is determining what means success to him. And he's been bringing that energy, he's been bringing that vibe to the men's group and to the Ego Hacker community. And it's just so amazing to watch. He's one of our madmen. He's a great man, a man that I have a huge amount of respect for because he is becoming an example. He is becoming an example of an INTJ man who has those social skills and who has that confidence and has that surety because he's honest about himself with himself, and everyone else just picks up on it. And because of that, he is a leader within this community. He does such a great job. I'm so impressed with him over and over and over, right? And I love them. I love them so much for everything that they've done for me, but also what they are doing for the community. But even beyond that, this is going to sound ridiculous, what these men are doing for themselves. That is excellent. They're taking life by the horns and taking that slice of life that belongs to them. They know it. And they're leading their families, they're leading their life, and they are moving forward in a great way. And these are the men who are sharpening their social skills as a result. Instead of having these shortcuts based on chasing other people's success, they are chasing their own success because they have discovered what success means to them. And that's what causes people to want to be around them. That's what causes people to find them acceptable and likable. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So these men are examples of going in the right direction, right? And women, INTJ women, well, They need real men out there to lead them, get them out of their unconscious focus, and figure out and be given the space and the time to actually reflect and self-reflect and keep track of their own failures and realize that they have all the space in the world to figure out what success means to them within the frame of a masculine man who sticks around for them and loves them regardless of their failures. And that is definitely something that they can have as long as they don't give up. They just have the guts to never give up, and they'll get where they're going. And that, folks, is how to cultivate social skills as an INTJ. Thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.